What's up, guys? I just wanted to get back and kind of talk about the Palantir double-click event. I've been getting a lot of questions. Um, I initially wasn't super impressed with the double-click event. I've since gone back and rewatched it one time and did sort of an analysis of comparable tools I've kind of used in the past and using today. Kind of want to go over that, but first I think it's kind of like important we take a step back and really understand the kind of problems Palantir is trying to solve, and that will really help kind of shape the conversation and for you guys to kind of understand where the business value is coming from. So we really need to understand first, like, why does any company acquire a platform like Palantir? And there are other platforms like Palantir, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But you have to understand the reason that companies are doing this are to make data-driven decisions at the speed and scale of AI. Okay, and that's the only reason. So like we don't acquire platforms like Palantir to do spreadsheets, right? We don't acquire platforms like Palantir to make graphs and do analysis and sit in board meetings and do forecasting. That's why you bought, like, those old school MacBook Pros and stuff, or Mac Pros, and why people bought PCs when they first entered the market. It's a very human-centric kind of way of doing things, where the computer is just that. It's more like a calculator than anything else. All right, so we're trying to make data-driven decisions, which in a lot of ways removes some of the human element and really amplifies what human beings are good at, and sort of takes away what they're bad at. And people, as it turns out, are really actually pretty bad at making calculations and analyzing data on a technical level. I think they're really good at looking at that data and deciding what to do about it, but they're not necessarily good at surfacing the signals that are in the data. And so what are some examples of some of these types of decisions, right? So customer experience, like, do my customers like my product or service, right? Customer engagement, how often are customers using my product and service? How efficient am I at delivering this product or service? How efficient are my suppliers and my partners at distributing my product and service? Am I in compliance with all laws and regulations? And is my internal staff doing their job, right? These are some examples, but there are other kinds of data-driven decisions companies want to make. But I think the broad umbrella of decisions is almost everything we do. We want to we want data to drive it, and we don't want our biases to drive the company into the ground. And that's a key thing, that there's been this shift in software to where, like I said before in my previous video, human beings are more around the edges. They're not at the center of these systems, and that requires a new set of tools and a new type of platform that simply doesn't exist yet. Well, it's coming into being now, and we'll get into a little bit more about that later on. So what happens if I don't make data-driven decisions, right? Well, it's my opinion that you will cease to be a viable business entity. And that's what, you hear Kathy Wood say things like, so winner take most, if not all world. That's what that means, right? So like every company is transforming itself under this banner of digital transformation right now to make data-driven decisions and to do these ML and AI initiatives so that they can make data-driven decisions. So anyway, that's what the consequences of not making data-driven decisions is that you will just not be viable in the business world moving forward. Who are the leaders in data-driven decisions? Big tech. I mean, it should come as no surprise. These are people that created the very workflows and platform tools we use today to make data-driven decisions. Most of these companies have created open source tools that I'll talk about in the end of this video that we use today to put together the type of what I would call the big data OS required to make data-driven decisions. So not only have these companies been making data-driven decisions for the better part of a decade, they've built a lot of the technology that is used today by people like me and my teams to build our own tools to do this. So how can business start making data-driven decisions? Well, you need to create AI and ML tools using highly trained experts. You need both of those things too. You can't just have AI and ML tools, and you can't just have highly trained experts. You need both. And what are some examples of these AI and ML tools? Well, we want fraud detection. We want chatbots. We want chatbots are really valuable because they drive customer service, and we want targeted advertising. We want recommendation engines. We want content moderation. Content moderation is a huge one, by the way. It is a deal killer for a lot of companies today. We want natural language query. We want to be able to query data the way we talk about data. We want to do forecasting using AI and ML. We want to do sentiment analysis. These are just some examples of the type of tools our teams build so that companies can make data-driven decisions and better serve their customers. So what platform tools do I need to create AI and ML tools? Well, I need ontologies, right? So I need data catalogs and data lakes. I need data labeling tools and services. Data labeling, just if you don't know what that is, it's basically a human being goes into a data set, whether it's images or text or whatever it is, and it's marked up in such a way that the AI ML engineer can do feature engineering on it. And so it's a human service where they're actually using a data labeling tool to mark up data, so that adding essentially metadata to data so that AI experts and ML experts can do feature engineering. Polyglot notebooks. Okay, this is a big one too, in that polyglot just simply means we have multiple supported languages and environments in the same platform tool. And that RStudio integration is actually awesome. Other people do have RStudio integrations, but just so you guys know, RStudio is used by a lot of data scientists. It's primarily a research tool. I think it's been used heavily in universities for a long time, and a lot of data scientists have come out of like the university environment. So it's a super important tool, and that RStudio integration is great. Python's the biggest language too, so it's great they have native Python integrations. But so these polyglot notebooks, and just so you understand what notebooks are, they're like interactive software development environments, they're integrated software development environments. They allow data scientists and engineers to essentially run code, execute code, save code while they're doing feature engineering, while they're building their models. So it's kind of like the research environment that all these people use. And big data analytics tools, of course, we need to be able to party on our data. Partying on data basically means I have like a big data query engine that I can use to poke and prod at the data and look at it and kind of see what's there across all these disparate data sets. We need feature engineering tools. Feature engineering is like a huge part of the data science journey, and it's essentially there's a lot of just a ton of work that goes into feature engineering. It's where you're finding the interesting signals in your data and how you're tuning your weights in your models. That feedback loop of like extracting more features so I can tune the model a little more. There's a lot of work that goes on in there, and so that we really need good feature engineering tools to speed up that feedback loop. We need data sharing tools to stay compliant with regulations, and also to just not blindly share, copy data across multiple platforms. We need transfer learning and auto ML tools. Again, transfer learning is this concept that I have a base model that's trained on a very large disparate data set, and then I can turn it onto another category of data and get the advantage of all that training that's been done on the base model. And then auto ML is essentially like just plug and play ML tools that a lot of platform providers like Amazon offer. And they're just out of the box ML solutions that you can use without having to do any kind of additional research and development. And CI/CD tools for audit trails and for continuous deployment and evaluation of models. This is probably 9 here, point 9. This is where the bulk of my work typically takes place with my teams. I guess, well, the bulk of it is probably the data wrangling and ontology creation and all that. But a close second is the CI/CD tools and audit trails. Because what we have to be able to do is we have to be able to take a model that a data scientist has developed. We need to package it up. We need to deploy it out to a staging environment. We need to test it, run tests and evaluation data on it. And then we also need experts to come in, look at the scores that come out of this testing and evaluation phase, and decide, like, is this a viable model? Do I want to deploy it to production, or do I want to kick it back to R&D and have them fix some things? And in order to do that effectively, we need to know exactly what data the model was trained on and evaluated with. And when we do inferences and staging, we need to know exactly what version of the model produced those inferences. So these audit trails are super important. You can't actually have a viable data science and engineering team without it. I wrote an article on Medium about this called Operationalizing Data Science, where I dive into the specifics of what this point 9 is, but it's super important to have. It's kind of where a lot of the engineering work to support data science has been invested in the last few years, at least in my experience. And so who offers these tools, right? Well, you got Palantir with Foundry and Gotham. You got Amazon with SageMaker Studio, which is close to the feature parity that I saw demoed in Foundry. You have Google Cloud's AI platform, which isn't as robust or nowhere near as robust, I would say, as SageMaker Studio or Foundry. Databricks with Databricks Lakehouse. I've used Databricks Lakehouse. It's a great platform. They have awesome tools. It's not as advanced as either SageMaker Studio. Well, it's definitely better than SageMaker Studio in what it delivers. It's not as advanced as Foundry, in my opinion, or Gotham, but it is a great platform. And then Apache Foundation. So this kind of gets into earlier when I was talking about big tech and their contributions to the big data world. Apache Foundation are open source tools, and there's a bunch of them that have been developed by all of those companies that I listed in that slide, including like Amazon and Google and Facebook. And it's just this giant bag of hammers, and you can go and put together all of these platform solutions that Palantir offers and Amazon offers for free. I mean, not free. The software is free, but you're going to spend years building those solutions. And we've been using a lot of Apache stuff to build our platform tools as well. But there's quite a lot of investment that goes on there, and your time to value is measured, in my opinion, in a minimum of 2 to 3 years. So it's not for the faint of heart if you're going to start implementing open source tools. And the reason I say 2 to 3 years, you're going to just meet developers out there who are like, dude, I can launch those stacks immediately, right? Like it's all good. Not really. Not when you're trying to do it at scale. Not when you're trying to actually build a production system that provides real world value for the business. I often don't see those initiatives really delivering a whole lot in outside of 2 or 3 years of real serious development. But I think the majority of companies who've been successful outside of the big tech bros have been using Apache Foundation, or they've been using Databricks. They haven't been using the other 3 listed here, in my opinion. And that goes back to the fact of just how new these services are. And like, to give you an idea, like SageMaker Studio is a fully featured development environment now, when just 2 years ago it was just a set of tools for me to like essentially package my models up, deploy them, and use this other product called AWS Step Functions to do the audit trails and deployment and all that kind of stuff. And in just a couple years, Amazon's thrown everything in the kitchen sink at it. And it kind of shows, because the product, at the end of the day, isn't that great. And so, these are the people building the tools. There might be others out there, and I'm sure there's other engineers out there who've, got tools that they, are using, or other platforms. But let's get into how Palantir, what's its differentiators, in this sort of sea of platform providers who are supporting AI and ML initiatives. Well, the first one, and the one that's probably the deal killer for every other tool I just listed, except for the open source versions, is data privacy. So basically, Palantir is very, very unique in that it offers deployment anywhere, right? So I can deploy it in my data centers, I can deploy it on a Humvee, I can deploy it on a drone, whatever. They advertise this on their site. I don't know what all that means, but the fact of the matter is, I don't need to use a cloud provider in order to deploy this. Now Databricks offers this too, but Databricks' platform is nowhere near as robust as Palantir's. But I think this is probably the key differentiator. And guess what? Palantir's committed to data privacy. Okay, so like, I'm reading a book written by Courtney Bowman, their head of privacy at Palantir right now, that I'm even going to have my teams read, because I think it's so well written on how to architect for data privacy. So this is a huge point. Why is that important? Well, I don't know. Maybe businesses don't trust cloud providers, right? Maybe my company doesn't want to have Jeff Bezos determining the future of my business and using my data in ways I don't want them to. So that's a big deal, and it's often a reason we can't use AWS services. Like Textract is a platform, an ML tool that Amazon offers, where I can do OCR, traditional OCR type of extraction out of documents. You scan a document in, grabs the textual information, and it's doing it using ML and AI. And so one of the reasons we couldn't use it is because they use your data, and we couldn't use it until we actually got them to silo our data and not use it. So like, there's problems with these using these platform tools from Amazon and Google, where companies just can't even use them because of data privacy protections. Again, 2 is closely related to 1. Palantir has the most robust deployment options. Most of the time when you deploy something like Databricks, for example, it's tooled up to be deployed in Amazon. Palantir can deploy in Amazon, it can deploy in Google, deploy in IBM, but it's also got great bare metal options with Apollo. And that's a key differentiator because guess what? No one else does, right? So like trying to deploy this shit in your own data centers or like some random facility somewhere, that's a really hard problem to solve. And the fact that Palantir can do it tells me that a lot of these big companies like in the Global 2000, they have their own data centers still. A lot of them are required by law to keep their own data centers. So like it's not they need the ability to do that, and that is a key differentiator in my opinion. So Apollo, as much as I kind of bypassed it initially, this could be something that is a key competitive advantage for Palantir. Maturity, right? So Palantir has been building this platform for the better part of a decade before anyone figured out they needed this stuff. So they have a lot of maturity that other people don't have, and I'll talk more about that at the end of this video. Consulting, put an asterisk next to this because anyone who's an engineer knows that solutions and platform SaaS do not go together. I talked about this in the first video. They don't mesh. It's separate business models. It is a definite problem for Palantir, but at the same time, it's a huge competitive advantage because their consultants are actually good at their job. Okay, like let me try and give you an example. Like Amazon's solutions architects, who I often deal with, have spent under 2 years in the field in a lot of cases. Unless you're a high-paying customer, a high-value customer, you're not getting their A team, you're getting their B team a lot of the time, and they aren't that good at building or architecting solutions actually going to deliver value for customers, and they typically don't do the coding. They typically are giving you an architecture to follow and then rely on your staff to do the coding. Palantir has a really unique kind of way of building software. I've actually reached out to some of their engineers on Medium. I was talking to one of them about how they do their GitHub repository architecture and how they figured out how to do sparse, what's called sparse checkouts in Git, and it allows them to manage all their customer code efficiently. They have been building this sort of continuous cycle of innovation around their consulting system to allow them to deliver this value for their customers at a decent scale. It's not a big scale, but it's also it's going to be a hindrance, right? Like I can't see this company growing beyond the Global 2000 at the way currently the way they are architected or the way they're tooled up to do their sales, and because they basically can deliver the platform at 80%, but to really deliver the business value where all the good things start happening, they need 20% of the time and money at least to be spent on consulting, and that's a slow process. Forward deployed engineers are both a good thing and a bad thing. I suspect, and this is actually a real common problem. I talked about it in the first video too. Like this happens a lot with startup companies, and they have to figure out a way in which they can create channel partners and turn their what Palantir calls their forward deployed engineers, which really their consulting side, transfer that over to their customers more. So like good documentation, good developer tools, good ways, test environments for developers to do the things that the developers on the company's staff who's buying Palantir, they need to do the things that the forward deployed engineers were doing before. And that's a process, that's a transition. That's kind of why in the back of my, like if you guys have seen my comments in like at Beyond Our Money's channel, he will often ask like, what's your price prediction for Palantir? I'm like 31 by 2025 because this is a really hard problem to solve and it takes a long time to evolve the platform away from having to have these custom solutions in there and to transfer that power and knowledge over to your customers so their engineers can start doing all that customization work. But when they hit the inflection point and they can go from the Global 2000 to 100,000 customers, dude, they're the new Microsoft. Like the bottom line is the big data OS is the only way companies are going to be doing business, and it's not the set of software tools we use today are just going to become really irrelevant after that. And so I truly believe that things are going to go sideways for a while. It's going to be really hard for them to live up for that $50 billion valuation when they're really going to be tackling the Global 2000 in the government space. That said, who knows what happens? Maybe they deliver way more revenue than they thought. But in my opinion, like that consulting is both a super big positive, a key differentiator, but also a super big negative. And then the other thing that Palantir does that no one else really does is deliver actual business value. So like, this is just mind-blowing, but all those other platform tools I was talking about, whether it's Amazon or GCP or Databricks, requires that the business do a lot of work to get business value out of these things. And they make a lot of mistakes along the way, and they make the same category of mistakes along the way. And that's really where 4 kind of comes into support 5, right? And it's interesting that this is kind of this sort of way that Palantir is working, because like it's really an admission that companies on their own can't take this bag of hammers that everyone else is giving them and build a house. They really need professional guidance from people who've been around the block and done it before. And that's really cool. And that's where that 10-year kind of head start that Palantir has, I think, is going to pay some big dividends for the company. And also just understand, cloud providers like Amazon are not a threat to Palantir, right? So like SageMaker Studio is, at the end of the day, in my opinion, a bag of hammers. Amazon does not care, in my opinion, about whether or not a customer uses SageMaker Studio. They just care that the customers on the AWS platform. They want them using their compute, okay? And that's why we saw Amazon, rather than compete with Palantir, decided it was a bigger problem if IBM starts bleeding their customers because they're offering ERP suite and Amazon's not. So Amazon cares less about its own internal services and more about customers just being on their platform. So I actually think the cloud providers are going to compete to get Palantir deployed, and to not necessarily push their own solutions over Palantir. And we've already seen that happen. So, and if it turns out that this level of consulting services I'm talking about in the immediate short-term window, say 5 years, is required in order to deliver business value to the people who actually can take advantage of these systems and tools, then Amazon doesn't want to be in that game anyway. Neither does Google. They're not consulting companies. They don't want to be consulting companies. And neither is IBM, right? So like, I mean, they have consulting aspects to their business, but primarily they want to grow their cloud business, and they don't necessarily want to compete against that. So I see, Palantir not competing with cloud providers at all. And if their tools are as good as they say they are, and like sort of the demo sort of implies they are, they're way better than anything that I've seen currently. And Palantir appears unique to me. Okay, so Palantir, again, is the only company I know who's really delivering actual business value through this combination of consulting and platform. And this actually makes sense when you consider they have at least a 10-year head start. And this was the craziest thing that came out of me rewatching the DoubleClick thing, because I was like thinking in my head, how the F did these guys figure out that this is the future platform tools we were going to need way, way, way back? If we get in the way back machine and just go back 10 years, that's not even the company's complete history, but let's just say we go back 10 years. Nobody was freaking making software this way other than the big tech bros. Like, that was it. And it's absolutely insane that they came up with this idea back when they did. And I have to believe that they've, through the process of iteration over that decade-long head start, have used continuous innovation to build a rather large moat. And I suspect as we see more of the platform, and if I can actually get this damn tool in my hands and start using it, it would be great, we'll truly understand how much value the platform delivers and how unique it is. But yeah, it was just mind-blowing, because looking at it, I'm looking at a tool that looks a lot like SageMaker Studio, but Amazon didn't realize SageMaker Studio was a thing until 2 years ago. And no one else did either. Databricks, maybe, to my mind, would be the only one that had the forethought and the vision. It was interesting too. Someone emailed me the other day and brought up that like one of the co-founders of Databricks is contributing to Palantir's open source Spark distribution. I didn't know that. Thought that was really interesting, but it kind of points to the fact that you have some pretty visionary people. They have a long head start in the industry, and I think that's going to pay some huge dividends. So yeah, I hope you guys get some value out of this. I think that my predictions about where Palantir's going to sit in the next 5 years are probably going to be pretty spot on, and that I wouldn't expect tremendous rapid growth from this company. I think that there's an inflection point which they're fighting to get to where they can expand beyond the global 2000. And that's a direct fallout of the fact that they need a combination of consulting and platform tools to deliver business value. But I think this actually kind of lines up with the whole many cycles of innovation we've had in the past, right? So like this same sort of thing also took place when computers started taking over business. It wasn't like the next day small and mid-sized companies were taking advantage of spreadsheets. Like it took a little while for the big boys to like adopt this stuff, train their people, develop the processes and retool their organizations, and then that trickled down into the small and mid-market much later. So I kind of think that we're going to experience a similar cycle of innovation, but it's way shorter. I think it's going to be compressed, whereas that maybe took the better part of 2 decades. This will take, the better part of 5 years. But anyway, I wouldn't be expecting massive growth from this company. I think that what where the value is here is how good that platform is and how much this 10-year head start is going to pay dividends for Palantir. And just, and another thing is also how much proprietary ML and AI can they deliver as part of their archetype solution. So the archetype solution thing is also really important. If Palantir can start delivering more pre-built solutions, which I suspect they will as they go into more industries, that's going to deliver serious value for the small and mid-sized market, in my opinion. So I think they're on the right track. They're doing everything right. They're building this library of pre-built ML and AI. They're trying to. I have to believe they're trying to figure out a way to eventually get to the mid-sized market and the small market. But with their media focus being on the global 2000 and delivering the big data OS that's going to drive data-driven decisions. And I think the people who adopt Palantir are going to have a tremendous advantage over other companies. I'm actually going out and buying a lot of their customer stock right now, because I actually believe that the platform is going to deliver a huge competitive advantage, because I've seen what it does for companies like Facebook and Google when you start making data-driven decisions. So anyway, yeah, guys, I hope you got something out of this, and I'm posting another video soon on data privacy. I'm reading this book by Courtney Bowman. I'm doing my own research, and I think if you're at all concerned about data privacy, you need to watch this video. All right, guys, talk to you.